Hey everybody, welcome back. Walkabout, talk about. This afternoon, Pete and I, we're going out for a little walk here. We can do a little walkabout. And, well, for me, it's coming up on my end of the week. And I was reminded by my spiritual father just a little bit ago. You know, how back when, how I participated with his ministry to make sure that the pure gospel was brought forth. You know, Jesus saves, no buts attached. And the way I did that back in the day, the way you only can do it today is in ministry, is to tithes and offerings. So I was reminded that, and even now, which is now my commitment to make sure that that ministry keeps going forward, taking the gospel, Jesus Christ, to the world. But I want to reflect on my time in ministry and also what I learned from participating with Gene's ministry back in the 90s. He was around before that, but when I needed him, he was there, and I began to participate with his ministry because, as I was reminded today, I reflected in Philippians 1 and 2. You guys can go and kind of meander through there, but kind of considering that this is what I watch as a rerun, but during the day was a reality, and I was participating with the ministry to make sure that the gospel was preached, and that was the most important thing. Yeah, and then later on when, I remember the one thing that Gene had a problem with all the time was enough funding. And of course, Gene didn't focus on fancy trinkets and or, sow here to gain there. He basically taught me that the importance of the tithe, that is not ours, because our entire lives are not ours, but God gives us 90% of our lives. With 90% of our lives, we live. 10% is His. And that 10%, as in the letters to Philippians, Paul was thanking the Philippians how from the first day that I presented the gospel of grace to you, Jesus saves, no buts attached. You participated with me in my ministry by making sure that you sowed your tithes to me all the time. Up until the very end of the day when, now he's in prison, and he's like, thanks for keep participating with me and sending in all the good goodies into the jail. But as you can ask any of the prison guards, he's doing pretty good. But Paul was really thanking him for participating with him. And my spiritual father reminded me of this today. And I was like, I do remember for quite a while I sowed my tithe there because that's what it was. And, it was bringing the gospel to those who were lost. And that man saved me. There was no other ministry on earth that could have saved me other than that man. and what God did through him. And that was because of faithful people and a very small bunch sowing a seed. Not even a seed, that's an incorrect statement. Giving their tithe to the man who presented them with the gospel. And that's what I did for the very longest time. And in the midst of time going on, I wasn't, well, needless to say, the waves came and the storms came, and I was blown into a new land. But in that land, can't even say it was born, and maybe sent like as a, well, man of God. And God said, here, I want you to go to this ministry, and I want you to serve me here. And I'm like, okay, I go and do it. And I went with the foundation of my spiritual father. And in that ministry, served for many years. And one thing I learned in that ministry, also being someone on the little board of directors that we were, little ministry we were, everything we did in that ministry is what Jesus said to do. We always had shortages. It's very hard to get monies for something that doesn't look like, I don't know, what's the way to say it? Something shiny and flashy. But you know, we did what we could. I met men who really taught me the art of service to the Lord. But my spiritual father taught me the hardest thing about a true ministry of God is having men participate in the ministry, especially the one that brings them the gospel, with their 10% of all they have. Which, in what I learned through my participation in what Scripture says, God is on your side, rebuking poverty out of your life. Scripture's out there. But I will remember that when I was participating in that ministry with my tithes, our Father was impressing into my spirit another ministry that He wanted me to go and serve in and teach me, well, I guess from the point of view of my spiritual father's point of view. Therein I learned that, yeah, he's right. If you're not selling trinkets and dinkets and you're just out doing the Lord's work, you can have the biggest ministries around you who rake in big dollars, and all they're peddling is pay your way for a quick fix half-hour sitcom. But truthfully, man, the ministry I was in for all those years, we didn't mess around with that stuff. We really dealt with homeless people, and we really dealt with single mothers and such, and almost, and poor, and seniors, as Scripture said. Yeah, and teenagers too. And the big kingdoms around us, as far as in ministry, didn't like us. I only assume the reason that is that we always only presented Jesus. Jesus saves, no buts attached, and we gave in the scripture where there's the poor man beat up on the side of the road, and the rich man goes by, and this man and that man goes by, and he's just beat up after being robbed. And one man stops by. Well, that was us. That was Jesus. He stopped by, picked you up, brought you over, clothed you, fed you. And that's what we did in our ministry there. And it seemed like the only way that we actually were able to support that ministry is because, well, at my time I was a contractor, so I was doing all kinds of work. You name it. If it wasn't doing a foundation, it was putting tile or cabinets. It was something, building something. I was a contractor, building contractor. And which also I used to do that building contractor maintenance issues inside our outreach building that we rented. So, but anyways, yeah, it was, the big deal was, hey, always had a hard time getting extra finances. But I will say one thing out of all that, there was one man there for the very longest time that I'm going to talk about in the next part here. So everyone pause out, and I'm going to talk about this one man.